Hi, welcome to the Pay Attention Listening Program. I'm Rachel Spiel, and this is Level 2, Visual and Auditory Memory. And in this video, I'm going to be talking to you about what memory is exactly. And I'm going to be explaining to you exactly what the Pay Attention Listening Program does, how it helps your child improve their visual and auditory memory. And then I'm going to give you some tips at the end that are going to help you make sure your child is 100% successful in boosting their auditory memory. First, let's talk a little bit about what exactly memory is. Memory is really the ability to remember what you hear or see, and it's really critical to your child's success, both at home and at school. It's just so important because it affects every single facet of what your child does. It helps him remember that he has to feed the fish, take out the garbage, and wash his hands before he sits down to eat dinner. And I'm sure all of you parents out there, I know I've had it happen to me, have sent a child out to go do something, and you've given them like 3 or 4 things to do, and you come back and they're in the middle of maybe the first or the third, and they're just completely discombobulated. You know, you tell them to go change their clothing and go put away their books and do one other thing, and you come back and they're just standing in the middle of the room half naked, and no clue what you said, what they're supposed to be doing. That's a breakdown of their memory. So that's at home. And at school, it's also pretty problematic. You can have a child that's sitting in class, and school is really, really hard on kids that have auditory memory issues in general, because they're expected to remember a lot of things in a short period of time. So you have a kid that's sitting in class and the teacher's giving instructions, and the teacher says, okay, everybody, now open up your textbooks, your history books, to page 39. But before you do that, I want you to just remember to put away your social studies workbook, and I want everybody to remember that I'm going to be checking over your homework, so put that at the top of your desks. Now think about all of that. That child, it's going to have to remember all that, and is going to be lost because they don't catch everything the teacher's saying. They haven't processed everything. They're really going to be at a really serious disadvantage. So as you probably know, you can really see that for a child to be really successful, it doesn't really matter how smart they are. And these kids are really smart. If they don't have a good memory, a really good functioning memory, they're going to have some serious problems functioning at home and at school. And by the way, children with language issues especially have poor auditory memories. They often have really strong visual memories, which is very interesting, because a lot of times parents, when I do evaluations, will tell me, but how can it be that they have such a poor memory? Because, you know, they seem to remember my aunt Kathy, or they seem to remember the place that we went to on vacation 5 years ago when they were just 4 years old. And how can that be? How can it be that they have such a poor visual memory, poor memory in general? So really what happens with these kids is that they do have a really strong visual memory, but that visual memory is not always connected to an auditory component. So like they may remember that there's this, they may remember the face, but they might not always remember the name. Also, what happens is sometimes some kids have a little bit of capability in their auditory memory, and so they remember some things, but it often is not the stuff they need to remember. Like, you know what that's like? They seem to remember all the unimportant things, like all their favorite movie stars, or they seem to remember best hits, and what's on the artists, music artists nowadays, but they don't seem to be able to remember, what they learned in school. It's kind of like, I don't know, the auditory equivalent of belly button. And unfortunately, that's sometimes what happens with kids who have auditory memories. It's kind of disparate, meaning they can have good auditory memory in one area and not in others. So in addition to not having a good auditory memory, a lot of times kids with language issues have really inconsistent memories. That's really puzzling to parents and kind of frustrating, because on one hand you think that they can do it because they seem like they've demonstrated an ability to remember things, and on the other hand, they're just not making it. So it's kind of critical to understand exactly a little bit more about auditory memory. I'm going to explain there are really 3 different kinds of memory, of auditory memory. The first is short-term memory, and that's pretty much everybody's heard about how they came up with phone numbers. Like, why are phone numbers 7 numbers long? Basically because that's the amount of digits that people can keep in their brain. Basically, it's 7 plus or minus 2. So that means that people can basically remember anywhere between 5 and 9 pieces of information at a time. and more than that, they just lose it. So short-term memory is very, very immediate. You either use it or lose it. Let's say you call information and you want to call a friend and you don't have a pen. Everybody's had this happen, and you don't write it down. So what do? You just kind of, say it over and over until, you can get over to the phone and dial and call your friend. That's an example of short-term memory. You're not going to use it again. You're not going to have it for later. It's just immediate. The next kind of memory is called long-term memory. And long-term memory is a lot like the hard drive in a computer. Really, it's there forever. The problem you have with long-term memory is not that it's not there, it's that you can't find it. I'm sure everybody's done that. You're trying to find some sort of file. You can't remember exactly where you put it. Well, unfortunately, you can't always find it so easily. In a regular computer, you can just choose search and, hopefully pop up search, and it'll do keyword search and you'll find your file. Although that's not always foolproof. But in your brain, if you fail to file information properly, it's really just as good as lost. So we need to teach the kids exactly how to file the information in their long-term memory so that the information will be accessible to them. So a third kind of memory is called active working memory. And active working memory is it's like the glue that holds two pieces of information together. In and of itself, it doesn't really do anything, but it works together with two other pieces of information. I'll give you an example. Let's say your child is drawing a picture, and this has probably happened to everybody, and they're really involved in what they're doing, and then they suddenly get distracted and they put down the crayon. Then they're like, oh, you're ready to use it. And where did I put my crayons? Where did I, everybody does that, right? Like, where did I put my glasses? Where did I put my phone? Where did I put my keys? That's a breakdown of active working memory. It's when you're trying to do basically two things at once. So your brain is kind of like multitasking, and with kids that have memory issues, it's hard for them to do both things at once. Another example of a breakdown in active working memory is when you go into another room to get something, and you're moving along, and you get there, and you're like, oh, what did I need? I forgot. That's another example of a breakdown in active working memory. So we're going to be working on all those things, and we're going to get into a little bit later exactly how we're going to do that. Now, one of the things I have people ask me a lot about is they want to know, can you really improve memory? I think that there's a misconception that memory is static, that you're kind of born with the memory that you have and you can't really do anything about it. It's really not true. We now know there's really a lot of research that really proves the fact that the brain is very elastic. People used to say, scientists used to say, researchers, that your brain is up till 6, basically, you can train the brain. Kids can learn, and after that, it's all downhill. And then it was 14, and then it was later teens. And now we're seeing that even in old age, you can retrain the brain. You can retrain those brain circuits to function on a much better level than you ever imagined. And actually, it's quite interesting because how I got into the idea of improving memory was I saw that with older people, or people that had strokes, or people that had other brain injuries, it was kind of a gone conclusion that, well, of course they had a stroke. We can work on their brain. We're going to work on their functioning. We're going to improve their memory, improve their language abilities. And for some reason, those people we looked at and said, yeah, those people, we can improve their functioning. We looked at kids with learning disabilities, and it was kind of like there really isn't anything you can do other than kind of just teach them coping skills. Or you can do more than that. We now know, and this program is really incredible in that we can literally rewire the brain for success. We can rewire your child's brain so that their memory is like boosted. It's like turbo boosted. It becomes 10 times, 20 times, 30 times more powerful than what it ever was. So we know that memorization is a skill, and your child is going to learn the tools that they need in order to improve their ability to memorize. Now, one of the reasons why this is level 2 memory and not level 1, for those of you who are familiar with the first level, which is attention. In the first level of the Pay Attention Listening Program, we work on visual and auditory attention. Well, we work on that first because in order to have a good memory, you've got to really pay attention first. you can't remember what you don't hear. If you haven't heard it because you haven't paid attention, you can't remember it. So we first work on helping your child have a good auditory attention and kind of taming their visual attention, because their visual system is kind of out of whack. It's really, really strong, and it's kind of overwhelming their auditory system, so that their auditory system can't function properly. And by the way, there's really nice research that's come out about that proves that, where they've actually studied the brain, and they've seen that, I like to call it, it's similar to a wild horse, that the visual system is so strong in kids like this, and it can be really an asset. And in fact, when they get older, we see these kids turn out into all kinds of interesting, fantastic careers. But at the moment in school, it's a hindrance. So what we're doing is we're teaching these kids to tame this wild horse of their visual system, visual attention and visual memory, and tame it so that they can use it effectively, so that it doesn't overwhelm their auditory memory, so that it can work, so the auditory memory and the auditory attention can work properly. So how does the program exactly improve memory? I've told you that you can improve memory, that it's a skill. So what exactly do we do to improve your child's memory? Now, one of the things that we've found that it's really pretty well known, researchers have found, and in general, it's known that good memorizers use basically 4 basic tools to remember information. And we're going to teach your child these 4 tools. And these 4 tools are so critical to your child's success that when you work on them, it's like boosting your child's memory from a 64K Atari. You remember those? I remember those when I was a kid. Those were like the hottest thing in computers. Well, it's like boosting your kid's memory from that to a 2.0 gigabyte operating system, probably more. So your child is still the same kid, but their brain, their memory, is going to be working a lot more efficiently, so that they'll be able to remember what they learn, and they'll be able to understand it and do a lot better than what they've been doing. The 4 tools in memorization are categorization, closure, paired association, and visualization. Let me explain exactly what that means. Categorization is basically sorting. So if we want to remember something, it's a lot easier to remember groups of things than it is to remember random items. So just imagine that you want to go shopping in the store, and you have this random list of apples and cheese and pears and carrots and peas, canned peas, and cabbage. Now, you can either remember that list. It's possible to remember that list just as it is, in order. There's nothing wrong with that. But you'll have a lot better chance of remembering if you categorize that, and you say, okay, I've got these fruits, I've got these vegetables, I've got these canned goods, and I've got these dairy items. So that makes more space in your brain for your child to remember what they need to remember. And even in learning, it's really, really important, because your child is going to be learning about various things, and instead of having to remember random facts, categorization allows them to kind of make an order to it, so that later on, when they want to be able to remember it, they'll be able to file things properly in their long-term memory, and they'll be able to find it properly because it's just categorized. It's like going into a file folder system and looking in the right folder to find what it is they need. The next type of tool that your child is going to be learning is called closure, and that's basically filling in the blanks. That means that one of the ways that we can help kids remember things better is to teach them to fill in the blanks from what they hear. Example of that is, let's say, a lot of times they use this also with rhyming, by the way, because that's easier. With the songs that we're going to be using, there's going to be refrains where 2 words rhyme. So you might have, let's say, feet and sheet, let's say. So you might have a sentence that starts with, I don't know, something, and ends in feet, and another sentence that ends in sheet. So you just want the kids to fill that in. I'll give you another example. One of the songs we have is Wheels on the Bus, a really fun song. A lot of kids are familiar with it already, although they might not know all of the words. We're going to teach them that. Your child's going to come out knowing the whole thing, and it's going to be fun too. But let's say you're going to listen to a song, and it's going to sing "The Wheels on the Bus Go," and you're going to stop. and your child fills in round and round. That's what closure is, just basically filling in the blank. And by the way, all this stuff that I'm telling you about is not only auditory stuff that we're going to be doing with your kids, we're going to be doing visual as well. So you're going to be working on auditory skills and visual skills. So when I talk about all these tools, keep in mind that we're talking about both visual and auditory memory. The next thing is called paired association. That basically means two things that don't necessarily have any connection, and you're pairing them together to make it easier to remember. So one of the songs that we have is "Oh What a Miracle." Believe it's by Raffi, or no, it could be Hat Palmer. I think it's by Hat Palmer. And one of the things they say is, if I have feet, watch me stamp. So we want your child to remember the words feet and stamp. Now, if you're wondering why this is important, a lot of times when your kids need to remember things like the ABCs, right? Any of you guys having problems with that? I know I did. I know we did. My child, it was like, I don't even know. I can't even explain to you how hard it was. It was beyond pulling teeth. And why he couldn't remember just those two pieces of information, because they were apparently random to him. Really, what does A have anything to do with the sound at, or A? It doesn't have anything to do with it. That's called paired association. And, if there's something that makes sense, like feet and stamp, it's easier. But when it's just completely random, it's really hard for kids to understand. So one of the tools we're going to use to get over that, so that your kids will be able to remember things like the ABCs, and even more important things, is called paired association. The next and last tool that your child is going to work on is called visualization. And that's really combining the visual and the auditory system so that they're working together to support each other. So basically what that means is, in order to help your child remember, we're going to take his visual system and harness it. So when he listens to a song, or when he even is sitting in class and he's listening to material and he's going to hear something, we want him to form a picture in his mind really quick. Not a really complicated thing, but we want him to form a picture in his mind of what that means, so that that can form a stronger association, that can make like a stronger impression on his brain, and he'll have a much, much better chance of remembering what it is that he's learned. Now, I know this is all really complicated, so don't panic if you don't remember everything. Don't panic if you don't understand everything right away. This is just an introduction. And of course, in the lesson plans, which are set out day by day, it's so clear. I worked really hard. We worked really hard to make sure that this should be really, really easy for parents to do and understandable for you guys, because we really want you to succeed. I really want you to succeed. I know your kid, I know your child can be fantastic. I know your child can succeed and be great in school and be great at home and be great with friends. And this is a tool to do that. So don't panic if you don't know everything. Little by little by little, you're going to get there and you're going to understand it. And of course, if you need help, always be in contact with me so that I can help you do that, because that's my job. I love doing it and I'm happy to do it. So please, don't panic. Okay? Just take it in, and you can always listen to this again to get a better idea of what we're talking about here. Now, I just wanted to, parents that are asking me, what exactly am I doing in this program? How is it different than the other programs that I've done? Is you're going to do, it's still got some of the same stuff. You're still going to be making sure that your child is at least 80% successful. And remember, even if you have to help them get there, parents always seem to have this, I guess it's this conflict, because we seem to feel that, no, it's got to be hard. I've got to test my child. I can't help them. This is not this program. This program is really exactly the opposite. As I explained in the previous level, but for those of you who may not have heard that or don't remember that, kids do best when we give them this window of opportunity of success. If we make it too easy, then it's not challenging, and they don't try, and they don't learn. If we make it too hard, then it's too hard, and who wants to learn if it's too hard? So you have this window of 80% that, generally, it doesn't have to be perfect, but generally, where we try and make it just hard enough and not too easy. So that's going to stay the same. And of course, you're going to continue to reward your child. You're going to probably change around rewards a bit. Now, some to get parents who I don't want to say lazy. I think that they're just moving along, and their child seems so happy, and they think, I don't need to really change things. We're doing good here. Let me tell you, up rewards a little bit. If you've been giving your child chocolate chips or a sticker, this is harder for them, and give them something a little bit different. It doesn't have to be bigger, but give it something a little bit different to make it a little bit more exciting. You know, we all work for reward. You know, everybody goes into work, and you may love what you do, but you're quite happy to get paid. All right? So your child is working on something that's so critical, and it's going to make such a big difference. Find something. I'm not saying it has to be sweets. I'm not even saying it has to be food. You can get really creative. You can let them choose their favorite lunch. You can let them have a fun activity that you wouldn't normally do, like finger painting or some other thing. You can give them 10 extra minutes of bedtime. You can be really creative in this, but whatever you do, you really need to make sure that you up those rewards just a little bit so that your child will have the extra energy and the extra motivation to work hard. It's not so hard, but it's going to work their memory muscles. And, you know, whenever you're working out, you're going to need a little bit, whether it's a physical workout or a brain workout, you're going to need a little bit of something to kind of keep them going, keep them motivated. The other thing you're going to need to remember is always warm up and finish off with a visual exercise, because your kids are visual thinkers, and they're really strong visually. That's really where their strong point is. That's relaxing for them. So we don't want to just like head into an exercise, boom, bam, and force the brain to work. Just as in physical exercise, you'd do some warm-up exercises. If you were running, you'd jog in place a little bit before you start the big run. The same thing with this. You want your child's brain to have time to warm up, and you also want your child's brain to have time to cool down. You don't want to just shut them down and kind of leave them like that. It kind of leaves their brain activated, kind of leaves it unbalanced. So you're going to warm up and finish off with a visual exercise. It can be any visual exercise. It can be something you've done in any of the previous levels, you know, this level or the previous level. Whatever it is, it doesn't even really matter if your child knows it already, although it's really good to see if you can up it a little bit and make it a pinch more complicated than you previously did. But if you can't, you can't. But you do warm up and finish off with a visual exercise. And the last important thing that you need to remember is always review a previous song, or very occasionally there are some books at every lesson, because the beauty of this program, one of the reasons why I really like it, is you don't have to do everything at once. So you do a song, let's say in one lesson, and you do a little bit. You do some. Then the next time you do that song or that book or whatever it is, you make it a little bit harder. So you're constantly reviewing the skills that your child has learned, and you're upping the level a little bit, and you're just always building on what you've done previously. So there's always progress, which is something really fantastic and really, I think, quite unique about this program. So that's just one small important thing. I haven't written this in the lesson plans. I don't think I might have written it, but this is just something I want you guys to remember, that you need to do this every time. And that's really about it. Just one last thing. Don't forget to have fun. Sometimes I'm happy if parents get really into teaching their kids because they're really excited about the progress that they're going to see. I am too. I think I'm almost as excited, maybe even more excited than you guys are, because I've seen it happen. I've seen kids really, really become like different people. So for me, it's very exciting because I know it's coming up, and you guys can only imagine, I guess. But I know I've done it with kids. I've done it with my child, more than one child, my own personal children. I've worked with kids on my own. So this is just as much fun for me as it is for you. And I don't want you to forget to have fun. So a couple of things you're going to want to do is you want to keep the pace during the lessons with your child brisk. I know sometimes, especially by some of the harder ones, you tend to like drag a little bit because I don't know why it happens. It just sometimes happens, but you just have to remind yourself, keep things moving, keep things moving. In that case, it's better to help your child out a little bit and help them to be more successful so you can get through it faster. Because again, like I said, you're going to be coming back to that, so don't worry about that. And some of the other ways that you can make sure you're having fun is involve your child, make really expressive facial expressions, bounce them on your lap, dance around, have fun, do whatever you need to do, and not just need to, what you want to do. If you want to dance around to Wheels on the Bus, or you guys really like a song and it makes you feel like getting up and moving your feet, do it. Don't let anything stop you. Get up and do it, and you'll have fun for it. It'll be good for you. It'll be good for your child. So don't hesitate. And a reminder that if you do see things starting to get harder for your child, always remember, back up and figure out why. Don't just say, well, it was just a day. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Take a look at how you structured the lesson, and take a look at how you can make it easier next time. Maybe you need to use more visual support, like use more pictures. Maybe you need to put in some more visual exercises. Sometimes kids get kind of stuck, nervous and tense, and they start not being able to pay attention. That means you need to take a break. So you can go back to a hidden picture. You could do a puzzle, whatever you want, a video game, little kids video game that's like a matching thing, whatever. Sometimes kids have a favorite